Hello and welcome to Remarkable Rare. I'm Kayla.
I'm Zohan.
And we are your hosts for this podcast. We will be doing the series called Living with SGS, and we will sort of explain in this initial episode the story of how we got involved and explain more about what the disease is and what the journey looks like from a caregiver perspective and many other perspectives. And so today's specific episode will define what a rare disease is and specifically get into defining what Shprintzen-Goldberg syndrome is. We'll refer to it as SGS, and we'll explore the ins and outs of what happens in the disease and its treatments. So let's just get into what is a rare disease. A rare disease can be classified as those that affect fewer than 200,000 people in the United States, according to the National Organization for Rare Disorders, also known as NORD. And as stated by the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, there are approximately 7,000 rare diseases. More than 25 million Americans are living with a rare disease, and of the known rare diseases, it's predicted that 95% have no treatment. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's crazy. I honestly feel pretty bad that, for such a large group of people, you have basically no options for them, and they're, left to suffer. It's really unfortunate.
And I think what is so important to note here is that, while they're, the disease itself is rare, since overall 10% of people have a rare disease, it's such a huge issue. Because within those groups, there's a few rare diseases, but just so many people have it, which is why, developing treatments and partnering with just advocacy initiatives is so important, because that over, and 95% is probably just an estimate, but it's over 90%, which is just incredible to me, so.
All right, yeah. I definitely think, when you think of rare disease, you think of it as rare, but when you combine them all together, you get the 1 out of 10 people, and it's really not rare when it's together, and it really needs to be solved.
That's so important to know.
Right. So going forward, we'll be focusing on SGS. So just to give an intro, what is SGS? So it's a extremely rare connective tissue disorder, and overall there's less than 50 cases in literature, so extremely, extremely rare. And what it is an autosomal dominant condition, but it typically occurs spontaneously, although there are inherited samples, but those are extremely, extremely rare. So what it's caused by is a mutation in what's called the SKI or SKI gene, which is a part of a pathway that is really important for early development, and that's called the TGF-beta pathway. So in this mutation, you have the normal repressor in the pathway, which goes and stops the TGF-beta pathway from activating. But when you mutate it, the repressor doesn't work anymore. So TGF-beta is always on. And if you think about that, imagine a pathway just going rogue and always staying on all the time. You're going to have problems in every organ system, right?
And it's such an important pathway because it's in that developmental part of life, which is why we see in so many SGS patients they have a number of symptoms that affect many different organs and just many parts of their body, which makes it so devastating to live with.
Right. Yeah, I think going along with that, one of the major symptoms is the early fusion of your skull bones. So normally you have different parts of your skull that comes together over time and you develop a normal skull. But because this pathway is activating so much, you get the fusion of the bones earlier than usual. And, that causes all sorts of issues, both facially, neurologically, etc.
Yeah, so with the diagnosis, and we'll talk about just the part of diagnosis in another episode, but one thing about rare diseases is because of how uncommon they are, they're often confused with other diseases, and there's a lot of steps that one might take to get to a diagnosis. And so there's a commonly known for like physicians who diagnose differential diagnosis is a common term for when you encounter a disease and you need to check for just similarities. There's crossover with symptoms, and so the differential diagnosis for SGS, there's syndromes such as Marfan syndrome and Loeys-Dietz syndrome that are very similar, and these must be screened to avoid this misdiagnosis, which is that differential diagnosis. And then specifically for SGS, genetic testing is needed for confirmation. We talked about the gene that was identified earlier, and that would confirm with all the symptoms available present as well. And so there are currently no cures for SGS with many other rare diseases, but treatments such as surgeries can correct a lot of the issues.
Right. I think just a sneak peek here. So one of the major issues is a C1, C2 spine malformation, which is right by your neck. And typically this is really life-threatening in this case. And later on, we'll find out an example of when this happened.
Right. That's so important because we learned that from just talking with a mother of someone with SGS, and you learn so much about this, which we are excited to show you guys in future episodes. But before we just talk about other conclusions about the disease, we want to just talk about what drove us into patient advocacy, rare disease advocacy, and why in particular we're spotlighting SGS. So what would you say was like your stepping stone for like getting into rare disease advocacy?
Right. I guess for me, originally, I didn't have too much of an idea of what rare disease is. I wasn't really involved in it. But so at Notre Dame, there's the patient advocacy program. And just out of a whim, I decided to take the program and just see what it was. And like through the program, initially it was just an introduction to rare disease, right? You learn like all this information and stuff like that. So not too much interest, but later on we started working directly with organizations and the patients themselves, and that really, I guess, touched me. So like just seeing how hard the organizations work, and like how hard their challenges are because of the like low number of people and the like complexity of their diseases. I really like appreciated their resilience and their effort, and it really inspired me to continue on and do my best to help these people.
Right.
So what about you?
So I would say my experience kind of came from a couple different just times in my undergraduate career. And there was one summer where I got to shadow a pediatric epilepsy unit, and we saw a patient who had a rare, extremely rare disease. I think it was one of 8,000 patients. It was something around that number, so very, very rare. And I saw the interaction between just like the patient and the physician, and there wasn't a lot to do with this disease because there aren't current treatments. And I sort of saw that process between them, and I thought that was just very moving to me because it can be really scary as a parent to have a child with something that's very unknown and that has a lot of mystery. And so that kind of got me thinking about the rare disease space. But it wasn't actually until I met the mother of an SGS patient actually that I really got involved in the rare disease advocacy space. And this was just meeting through just a gathering, and I learned a lot about SGS, and so that kind of connected me with SGS in particular. And then there's so much amazing work that's happening at the University of Notre Dame, and so just getting to be immersed with other students and faculty that are very interested in it just really fueled this for me. So
yeah, for sure. I was also really inspired when you introduced me to the SGS patient mother. Like I really thought their story was amazing, and like you guys will find out too next time.
Yes, exactly. And so yeah, that's kind of like why we think that highlighting just rare disease in general. It's just knowing how neglected this particular group is, and just through our experiences with SGS, this disease and it is an ultra rare disease. There's fewer than 60 people in the world that have it. And so it's just really cool to see how patients and patient families are able to really live a great life with something so unknown and something so mysterious. So we'll talk a lot about that in the next episodes. And so just to transition, what are some conclusions that we might be able to just draw from just with SGS, where it is in its current state and where we see we're going to head into the future with this?
Right. I think key thing to note for SGS is the current lack of a cure and, like, honestly, a lack of a lot of effective treatments. But, even despite all of that, you still have a lot of hope. You're able to, like, go through many surgeries, and if you're persistent, you can still, survive and live a pretty good life. So it's not all negative.
Agreed. And so in our next episode, we'll get the chance to really explore a personal journey more in depth, and sort of discover what the diagnosis is like, the journey, and really explore that odyssey that you guys will learn a lot about. That we'll find out in the next episode, and we'll have a guest, and you guys will experience this with us firsthand. So,
right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
all right. Bye, guys.